fan, Harry Symeou here, just to discuss Arsenal's season. Do you know what? We had a lot of people there slagging Arsenal off. And you must have had a lot of that this season. First of all, I just want to give you a chance just to tell me, just to sum up in so many words, what Arsenal's season has been to you.
Well, I'm going to be really biased here, and I'm going to just say it how I'm thinking it right now. You know, the reason everybody wants to stick the boot in on Arsenal is because we're massive. Okay, that's what it is. Arsenal are a huge football club, and you know we've shown ourselves over the last few years to have a fan base that can be, in a lot of areas, very reactionary, and so it's an easy win. You know, have a go at Arsenal. You're definitely going to get some traction. You're definitely going to get some heat on that, and I feel like there's been so much of that in the past 2 weeks since that defeat at Spurs and then the Newcastle defeat that followed that. Everybody has been waiting to put the boot in on Arsenal, and for large periods this season, Mikel Arteta has been able to keep the Wolves away from the door because he has surpassed what anybody gave him a hope of achieving this season at the start of their campaign. I remember 3 games into the season, I was coming into work and people were talking about relegation.
Yeah.
I remember people telling me that Leicester, Aston Villa, and Manchester United were all guaranteed to finish above Arsenal after the summer transfer window. And look how that turned out. So what I find really difficult to deal with is listening to pundits, rival fans, journalists who were adamant that Arsenal would be lucky if they finished in the top half of the table, and were adamant that Arsenal would be lucky to make the top 8, who are now saying that the season is a complete car crash, failure, disaster. Antonio Conte, I get told, is the best manager in the world. And I agree that he's right up there. So why is it a surprise that he's picked Mikel Arteta to 4th place? Harry Kane has been the best striker in the Premier League for a number of years. Heung-min Son has been incredible. He's just won the Golden Boot. These are 2 elite level players that Tottenham have at their disposal and Arsenal don't. So why is it a surprise that Arsenal have missed out narrowly, that Arsenal have taken this to the last day and just about fallen short? It drives me crazy because, you know, we talk about football being so short term, you know, giving managers time, giving them the opportunity. Mikel Arteta has come into that club and ripped the heart out of it and started all over again. And this is the end of his 2nd full season. To move from 8th to 5th is progress. To be in the Champions League hunt is progress. And to do it with the youngest squad in the Premier League sets a really strong basis and foundation for the future. We needed a rebuild. We needed to do it properly. And we're doing that. Tottenham can laugh now, they can celebrate it now, but the minute that Antonio Conte doesn't get what he wants out of Daniel Levy, I guarantee you he'll be the first one in a taxi to Heathrow Airport.
Interesting you say that Mikel Arteta has ripped everything out and started again, which is what Arsenal needed. We have another club in the Premier League that pretty much needs that as well in Manchester United. So Erik ten Hag is in theory going to do that. He's going to have to do what Mikel Arteta's done and probably a bit more. Do you think Manchester United will get as much feedback and reaction as Arsenal have had this season if the improvement isn't as instant?
Yeah, they will, because again, they're massive as well, and that's what happens. You know, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. You know, and Manchester United have been below the level that they should be at for quite some time now. I think their 2nd place finish, not last season, the one before, kind of set unrealistic expectations about what they could achieve, and then they had a transfer window in which they brought in Jadon Sancho, Cristiano Ronaldo, Rafa Varane, and people thought that maybe they'd be able to push on. But it still didn't take away from the fact that they are rotten to the core in so many areas. Yeah. And this kind of expectation that a manager can go in and can just click his fingers and turn things around is completely false. What you want nowadays, particularly with what we were talking about earlier, with the direction in which football's going, becoming a bit of a super league with certain clubs ruling the roost, what you need is sustainability, and you need to be able to sustain any success that you have in the way that Liverpool have. Liverpool have done brilliantly. They're the benchmark. They are what you aspire to be. But that took time to achieve. And I don't understand why people are so reluctant to give these managers time and give them the opportunity to make their mark.
It is strange, and you have to admire the way that Liverpool do it. As you say, you know, they brought in Jota last summer to replace no one, just to strengthen the positions they had already. And, you know, say they did lose one to injury, he's already slotted in. I mean, he pretty much hit the ground running. Looking at Arsenal over Manchester United, they were 11 points clear. So there is a huge gap between Arsenal and the rest of the teams there. Looking at Arsenal on the pitch, the thing that jumps out to me if you look at the league table straight away is actually, to be fair, with Arsenal and Tottenham, three draws in the whole season for Arsenal. and 5 draws for the whole season in Tottenham. That's kind of half what the other teams are playing at. So for Arsenal and Tottenham, it's basically much win or lose.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be something that's got to be sorted. It's got to be that consistency, because Arsenal were frustrating to watch, because you tune in and you go, you know what, I want to watch Arsenal because I think actually they won that last game 4-0 or whatever, and then you watch them again and they'll lose 2-0 to someone they shouldn't lose to. But then the next game you won't bother watching because you'll be like, oh, Arsenal were rubbish last time. Hang on, they've won 5-0.
That's the risk that you run when you go for this approach, where you're looking to rely on young players who unfortunately aren't yet at the point in their careers where they can deliver consistently week in, week out. You know, we've talked a lot about Bukayo Saka on this show, and he's been brilliant. 12 goals in all competitions, though, you know, I'm not to take away from him, but it's not enough to propel a team into the Champions League. Emile Smith-Rowe was the next top scorer on 11. Again, that's not enough. Alexander Lacazette, who was playing centre forward for a large proportion of the season, only managed 6 goals in all competitions. Yeah. That's not good enough. And that's why I say that the expectation that some people had of Arsenal based on where they've been in the last few months was overblown. Because if you actually look at some of the metrics, you'll see that, you know, it isn't that much better. I mean, they've conceded 9 more goals this season than they did last. They haven't drawn many games, but they've lost 13 games. It's too many. But having said that, you know, they've managed to pick up, they're third in the rankings in terms of most wins this season, only behind Manchester City and Liverpool. They're level with Tottenham on that. So some of the metrics make good reading and positive reading, but it's still very mixed with Arsenal.
Yeah, I find the consistency though, and you know, the wins are there. It's just the turning those losses into draws and maybe holding on to wins for a bit longer. And you're laughing. I mean, for me, Arsenal, you know, they don't have a striker that, you know, they don't have an exciting striker. So that's got to be a position they need to improve on in the summer. We've seen Gabriel Jesus linked along with Spurs, who, you know, don't need a striker as such. But I mean, I'm assuming Harry Kane will sign a new contract if Conte's still there. Do you think he's the man, or do you have another favourite striker that you think could come in? I know that, you know, strikers, there's been a few mentioned from Italy that could do a job in the Premier League and certainly would do a job for Arsenal.
There's a few I've got in mind. Gabriel Jesus is definitely one of them. I like the look of Darwin Núñez over at Benfica. I think he'd be a good fit for Arsenal. So at the moment, those are the two that I'm kind of growing a little bit attached to. But you're absolutely right to mention the striker point. That's been the real missing puzzle piece. And it's not to say that Mikel Arteta's overlooked that position, but he didn't expect what happened with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to happen midway through a season. And so you can forgive him for going into the campaign thinking that we could get by for one more year and focus our resource on other areas. But, you know, 42 big chances missed for Arsenal this season. That's a Premier League stat. And they've hit the woodwork 18 times, only behind Manchester City. It just shows you that when it comes to that striking department, people talk about a lack of creativity at Arsenal. That's not the case at all. It's just not being able to apply that finishing touch. It's fine margins. And so that's why we say there's progress. And that's why we say, you know, the quality ultimately in certain areas was just lacking when it needed to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll talk a bit more about Arsenal, I'm sure, before the end of the show. But for now, I mean, positive about next season. You think that they'll be able to tighten these things over the summer? You think the funds will be there to invest? Yeah,
I'm quite confident that the ownership are going to back Mikel Arteta again. I think it was very clear that his objective set by the club, not what the fans wanted, but set by the club, was to go on and secure European football. He did that. That was followed by his contract announcement. And I think that Arsenal have done a lot of work behind the scenes to identify some targets for the summer. So, yeah, optimistic that we're moving in the right direction for sure.
Of course, and obviously having, you know, if they'd qualified for the Champions League, they may have been able to attract these players that, you know, would play in the Champions League. However, I think Aston Villa, you know, with Kamara, who Aston Villa have just signed there, he had an offer on the table, and I can't remember which club it was, who played Champions League football, and he's actually chosen to go to Aston Villa because he believes in the project there, which is, it shows that, you know, footballers aren't always about, I want to play in every, you know, the highest league. So especially some younger players who maybe have a bit more time on their side, because Arsenal, let's face it, are a Champions League club. They're such a big club, and they've, you know, got a good history in the Champions League. They will get back there at some point, but maybe in the short term, it's maybe a good thing that they got Europa League. They're back in Europe. They can move on from there.
Well, the workload that you'll get from the Europa League and the Champions League is much more manageable in the sense of you'll be able to rotate a lot more in the Europa League, particularly in the group stage, and get away with it.
Yeah.
Arsenal have shown that in recent years, where they've gone to 2 semi-finals and a final in the competition. So I think that, you know, I'm not saying I prefer to be in the Europa League. Obviously, I'd have preferred to be in the Champions League, but it's not the end of the world. I think there's enough evidence there for Arteta and Arsenal to be able to sell the project to any potential signings. And I think that we're shopping in that bracket just below the very elite anyway, regardless of what competition we're playing in.
And the good thing about the Europa League, of course, it doesn't mean you have to keep Tuesdays and Wednesdays free. You can just keep Thursdays free.
Yeah.
It's always on a Thursday. Good. Harry Symeou, broadcaster with me alongside me here on the Social on TalkSport 2, where next